Well, thank you for joining me on this question. I'm going to be looking specifically at question 2, part A, which is a table. And what we're told that sine of theta is 0.5. We're given that. We're told that cos of theta is 0.866 negative. That's to 3 significant figures. We don't know tan of theta, so that's what we want. And we don't know theta, so that's what we want. Well, let's have a look at, first of all, notice that sine is a positive and cos is a negative. Now, it's important that you are aware of the quadrant rules, that all of them are positive in quadrant 1, that only sine is positive in quadrant 2, that only tan is positive in quadrant 3, and only cos is positive in quadrant 4. Now, which quadrant are we? Well, because only sine is positive in quadrant 2, we're dealing with a quadrant 2 angle. So it's important to notice that, first of all, we are familiar that it's quadrant 2 angle. Therefore, tan, we already know, will be a negative. Now, let's have a look at the 0.5. Now, because we've got two types of triangles that can help us, I would use first of all, the 60-60-60 triangle, and I would use the square, which is our 2, and the diagonal of a square, which is 45 degrees. Or if we're using radians, we will use pi over 4 for radians. For this equilateral triangle, 60-60-60, we've got 60-60. We would split this triangle up into 60, 30, 90. So really, it's this triangle here that mostly we'll be using, and it's this triangle here that we mostly will be using to help us. So there's a 90 degrees, there's a 90 degrees. Well, here in our square, we use a 1, 1, 1, 1 square. In our triangle, we use a 2, 2, 2 triangle. Now, a 2, 2, 2 triangle means this is a 1 and this is a 1. And then using Pythagoras, a squared, 1 squared plus b squared equals c squared, which is 2 squared. That's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And a is 1, b is what we don't know, c is 2. And so therefore 1 plus b squared equals 4. Therefore b squared equals 3. And we get b as the square root of 3, which is 1.732 approximately. I'll just make it 1.73 for 3 significant figures. Which triangle, and by the way, this square is a squared plus b squared plus c squared. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. 1 squared plus 1 squared equals c squared, which is our diagonal. So 2 equals c squared. So our diagonal is square root of 2. So we've got a root 2 here. And what have we got? We've got a half. Now a half is the opposite over hypotenuse equals a half. So because sine theta is equal to a half, it means that the opposite divided by the hypotenuse, that's the ratio for sine, is equal to, where is the opposite 1 and the hypotenuse 2? Well, the opposite is 1 from 30 degrees, the hypotenuse is 2 from 30 degrees. Our acute angle is 30 degrees. That's the acute theta. That's the acute theta, but it's not the answer because it's theta. It's 30 degrees in the second quadrant. So I'll put 30 degrees here in the second quadrant. It's 30 degrees here to the x-axis. It's important that you know the acute angle has to be 30 degrees. The acute angle is 30 degrees, or pi over 6 radians. But in the second quadrant, that means in quadrant 2, we're dealing with, I'm going to put the 4 rules that you should know. Theta is the acute angle. 180 minus theta is the angle in the second quadrant. 180 plus theta, the acute angle in the third quadrant. 360 minus theta in the fourth quadrant, or minus theta. Notice it's always to the x-axis, 0 or 360. Of course, if it's radians, we'd say pi minus theta, pi plus theta, 2 pi minus theta. So it depends if we're dealing with radians or degrees. So 30 degrees in the second quadrant means 180 degrees minus theta equals 150 degrees. So if you want the angle in degrees, we will put 150 degrees. If you want it in radians, because it's pi minus pi over 6, the angle is 5 pi over 6. And you can get that by converting 5 pi over 6 radians. Okay, well, let's check cos theta. Is that correct? Is the adjacent divided by hypotenuse 0.866? And the adjacent is root 3. And is root 3 divided by 2 0.866? Yes, it is. So we are correct. And it's negative because it's in the second quadrant. And tan equals opposite over adjacent. Therefore, the opposite side is 1. The adjacent side is root 3. And so we get 1 over root 3. And can we get that as on the calculator? Well, I don't have a calculator on the screen, so you're going to have to trust me on this. I'm just going to go to my trusty little calculator over on the side, and I'm just going to go, let's find scientific if I can, and if I can find scientific, not on that phone. All right, let's go to my iPhone. It's a bit slow. Calculator. Good. If I slide it around, yep, it gives me square root number scientific. Here we go. 1 divided by the square root of 3 on my calculator is equal to 0.577. So 3 significant figures, 0.577, and it's negative 0.577. Wow. I hope you understood that process. There's a lot of thinking involved. I recommend you follow a particular process, and the processes I follow are knowing this quadrant here, knowing the rules for each quadrant, and also knowing these two triangles here so that you can work out, is it a 30, is it a 60, or is it a 45 degree? Well, I hope this has helped. Until next time, stay happy.